Tutorial number 5. We are continuing with the Big Brother series, and we will be making amber today. I will be using a standard rainbow loom in the offset position. The bands I'm using are brown, tan, yellow, white, and blue. I'm going to start with the attachments, and I will be doing the arms first. And I will be using the camo tan color for the skin tone bands. And I'm using double bands throughout. And for the arms, I'm going to put 2 skin tone bands from the 6th peg to the 5th peg from the bottom. And I'm going to do this all the way to the bottom. Which will be 5 links of the skin tone bands. I'm going to cap this with a single skin tone band wrapped 3 times around the last peg. We're going to do the same on the other side. 2 skin tone bands in a 5-link chain down the left side. This as well we will cap with a skin tone band wrapped 3 times around the last peg. And now we can loop this. I'm just going to loop to the top of the arm, making sure I catch both bands and that I have a raindrop or teardrop shape once I loop up over the peg above. We'll do the same on the other side, looping to the last band, making sure I catch both bands and that I have a raindrop shape. I'm going to take a spare crochet hook and remove this from the loom and set this aside. For her legs, I'm going to be using the skin tone bands, which I will put from the 3rd to the 2nd peg on the bottom, and yellow bands from the 2nd to the 1st peg, capped with a yellow band wrapped 3 times. We'll do the same on the other side. 2 skin tone bands, two yellow bands, and a yellow band wrapped 3 times around the last peg as a cap band. And we can loop this. And this will go on the holding hook. And we will set this aside. Next, I will be making her nose. I'm not going to do ears because I've discovered in my characters with long hair, their ears kind of get hidden anyway, so I'm just not going to bother wasting the bands. So I'm going to take a skin tone band and double it, wrap it 3 times around my hook, and another skin tone band and double it, and thread these bands on my hook onto the doubled band. And this is my nose, which I attach after, so I'm just going to put it up here on my hook out of the way. Our next attachment is the eyes, and I will be using blue bands. I'm going to take a single blue band and double it and wrap it 3 times around my hook. And I'm going to take a single white band and double it and slide these blue bands onto the white band. I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye. A single blue band, double it, wrap it 3 times around my hook, a single white band, double it, and slide these blue bands onto the white band. And those are my eyes, which I am going to thread onto a single skin tone band, and I will set this aside. Our last attachment will be the hair extensions, and for that I'm going to be using brown bands. I'm going to wrap a single brown band around my hook 2 times and thread that onto 7 brown bands. And there's one hair extension, and I'm going to place this on a holding hook and set it aside. And we want to repeat that, a single brown band wrapped 2 times and then thread onto 7 single brown bands. And we're going to place this on our holding hook. What we need to do for the rest of the hair extensions, we're going to need to make 2 chains that are 5 links long and 2 chains that are 3 links long. So exactly the same way we made these with 7, we are going to make 2 more with 5 and 2 more with 3. And you can pause this video while you do that, and I will meet you back here when you're done. Welcome back. You should have 2 extensions that are 7 links long, 2 that are 5 links long, and 2 that are 3 links long. And we're going to set those aside. And now we're ready to band the loom. We're going to start with her hair, and I'll be using the camo brown. I'm going to put 2 bands from the first peg to the second peg in the center, 2 bands from the first peg in the center to the first peg on the left, and 2 bands from the first peg in the center to the first peg on the right. I'm going to put 2 bands going down the left 2 times. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. 2 brown bands 2 times down the right. We'll go to skin tone bands, 2 bands 3 times down the center. And I will use 3 skin tone bands for the neck. And finishing off the face, 2 skin tone bands on the left, 2 skin tone bands going from the 4th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center, and 2 skin tone bands going down the right, and 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the right to the 5th peg in the center. Moving down to the body, I'm going to put 2 skin tone bands down the center. I'm going to put 2 skin tone bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the left, and 2 skin tone bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the right. For her dress, I'm using yellow bands. I'm going to put 2 yellow bands 5 times going down the left side, and 2 yellow bands 5 times going down the right side. Moving to the center, 2 yellow bands 4 times down the center. Skin tone bands for her legs, 2 skin tone bands on the last 2 pegs on the left, and 2 skin tone bands for the last 2 pegs on the right. Closing off her dress, 2 yellow bands from the 3rd peg on the left to the 3rd peg in the center, and 2 yellow bands from the 3rd peg on the right to the 3rd peg in the center. And this we will cap with a single yellow band wrapped 3 times around the 3rd peg in the center. I'm just going to go over the banding. Down the center we have 2 brown bands, 2 skin tone bands, 2 skin tone bands, 2 skin tone bands, 3 skin tone bands, 2 skin tone bands, 2 yellow bands, 2 yellow bands, 2 yellow bands, 2 yellow bands. Moving to the left, we have 2 brown bands from the top peg in the center to the top peg on the left, 2 brown bands twice down the left, 2 skin tone bands, 2 more skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the left to the 5th peg in the center, 2 skin tone bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the left, 2 yellow bands 5 times down the left, and 2 skin tone bands on the last 3 pegs at the bottom. The same thing for the other side, 2 brown bands from the top center peg to the top right peg, 2 brown bands 2 times going down the right, 2 skin tone bands, 2 skin tone bands from the 4th peg on the right to the 5th peg in the center, 2 skin tone bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 6th peg on the right, 2 yellow bands 5 times down the right, 2 skin tone bands the last 3 pegs on the right, 2 yellow bands on the 3rd pegs up from the bottom on the left, in the center, and on the right, and it's capped with a yellow band wrapped 3 times. And now for the holding bands, we want a single brown band around the 1st peg on the left and the right and the 2nd peg in the center, a single skin tone band around the 2nd pegs on the left and the right and the 3rd peg in the center, and a single skin tone band around the 4th pegs on the left and the right and the 4th peg in the center. Moving down to the dress, a skin tone band around the 6th pegs on the left and the right, and the 7th peg in the center, a single yellow band around the 7th peg on the left and the right, and the 8th peg in the center, a double yellow band around the 8th peg on the left and the right, and the 9th peg in the center, a single yellow band around the 9th peg on the left and the right, and the 10th peg in the center, and a single yellow band around the 10th peg on the left and the right, and the 11th peg in the center. And now we're ready to add our attachments. We'll start with the eyes, which go on the 3rd peg down on the left and the 3rd peg down on the right. I'm going to grab one of the bands that the eyes are on and stretch it up over the 3rd peg from the top in the center. Next, I will attach her legs and her shoes, and these will go on the last peg on the left and the last peg on the right. Next are the arms, and they will go on the 6th peg down on the left and the 6th peg down on the right. For her hair extensions, you want the 3-link chain to go on the top peg on the left and the top peg on the right. The 5-link chain will go on the 2nd peg on the left and the 2nd peg on the right. And the 8-link chains will go on the 3rd peg on the left and the 3rd peg on the right. And now we're ready to loop. I'm going to start in the center and going inside the cap band and the holding band. I will grab the top 2 bands and they will go down and to the right, and the next 2 bands are going down and to the left, and we will work up the left, grabbing only the bottom 2 bands, and I'm going to loop all the way up to the neck, making sure I stay inside the holding bands and that I grab the bottom 2 bands only. And now we'll go over to the right, grabbing only the bottom 2 bands and making sure that I have a teardrop shape each time. And again, we will loop this all the way up to the neck. And now we're going to loop up the center, staying inside the holding bands, grabbing just the bottom 2 bands, and making sure that we have a teardrop shape. Now, when we get to the neck, we want to make sure that we grab all 3 bands of the neck, and then we are going to reach in and grab the top 2 bands, which will go to the right, the next 2 bands, which go to the left, and the last 2 bands go up the center. And then moving to the left, we will loop up to the top center peg. And the same thing on the right. Again, making sure I stay inside the holding bands and the bands holding the eyes. I'm grabbing just the bottom two bands and making sure that I have a teardrop shape. And here is where I attach the nose from the fourth peg in the center to the third peg in the center. So I grab a hold of the bands and slide my nose down onto those bands and then loop it up over the third peg from the top. And then we can finish looping. I will grab the last two sets of bands here, and there we go. So we want to double check that we have looped every band. Check from the side. And now we can attach our Slipknot band. So I'll put my hook straight down through the top center peg, making sure I've gone inside every band. I'm going to grab a single brown band and pull it up through those bands and form a slip knot. And now we can remove it from the loom. For areas like the neck that have a lot of bands, I like to put my hook inside and roll my hook around the peg to loosen the bands so that they don't stretch too much and break, because there are a lot of bands in that area. And the rest should come off fairly easily. Now we just need to give her some tweaking. I'm going to straighten her eyes out a little bit. I always find that I have to do the eyes several times, so I'm not going to do much with them right now. I'm not sure if it's just in positioning everything else that they get turned around, or what exactly the problem is. Anyway, so we'll start at her feet, and I'm going to put my hook inside the yellow teardrop and give a little tug, pointing her foot to the side. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And we have double bands in the waist area, so I'm just going to give that a little squeeze just to define it a little better than the double bands have done. And for her arms, I'm going to point them down to her sides a little bit. And you can put your hook in again and give a little tug, or I find it's just as easy to grab two of the bands on one side and pull it up. And fix her hands. And I'm going to bend her elbow a little bit by putting my hook inside the bands and giving a little tug. And now for her hair. If you've seen me on the other tutorials, then you'll be familiar with this. I'm going to put my hook inside the last two bands of the hair closest to the face, and I'm going to grab the cap band of the top hair extension and pull it down through both of those. I'm going to put my hook back into those same two bands on the last extension and grab the cap band of the middle extension and pull it down through. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm putting my hook inside the 2 bands closest to her head on both the 2nd and 3rd hair attachments. And I'm grabbing the cap band of the top hair attachment and I'm pulling it down through. And I'm going to put my hook inside the 2 bands of the bottom extension, grab the cap band of the middle extension, and pull it down through. We just need a little bit of adjusting to straighten out the links. You can play with this until you get it to fall the way you want it to or look the way that you want it to. Tweak them a little bit and tuck them here, tuck them there, and they should eventually look the way that you like. We need to attach a mouth, and I'm going to use a white band, and I'm going to reach my hook in at the side of her face in the approximate mouth area and grab the white band, and then I'm going to put my hook in the same general area on the other side of her face and grab the other end and pull it through. And I'm going to use a C-clip and just secure both of these ends. And then we can adjust her mouth. Now I've used white bands because in the photo she has a very prominent toothy smile. You could use a pink band to represent lipstick. You could use skin tone bands just to represent regular lips. The choice is yours, whatever your preference is. You can get the hair to cooperate, I promise. Mine is a little bit unruly here right now, but eventually it will settle down. It's time consuming to make sure the bands are straight and where they need to be, but they will eventually settle down. So just stretch and tweak your hair as best you can, and it will eventually fall the way you want it to. And worst case scenario, if you can't get the hair to lay that you want it to, you can always just pull it to the back and put it in a ponytail. And I will tuck in the Slipknot band, and I'm just going to tuck it through a couple of bands in the back just to keep it out of the way. Okay, and there we have it. This is Amber from Big Brother 16. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to leave your comments below. I look forward to reading them. I'll see you next time. We will be doing Caleb.